There's many things that come to mind when you think of the moon, but strange artifacts probably aren't one of them. Scientists, researchers, and space agencies have revealed that our moon is interesting. Not only is it Earth's only natural satellite, but data has shown them that artifacts could have been left on the moon by past civilizations. This is according to recent studies carried out by artificial intelligence. We have scanned the moon over and over, and every year it seems that NASA and other space agencies uncover things previously unknown to us. There are others who have said that the moon is full of mysterious artifacts, and that some of them can be seen when looking through old NASA images. What's interesting about these claims is that some of them are even backed up by former NASA workers, with them saying that some of the older Apollo images shows what appears to be lodged-looking structures on the moon's surface, and that in some cases NASA even asked them to edit out these in order to not cause panic. Bold claims require hard evidence, but people like Dr. Ken Johnson, who previously worked for NASA, said that they've seen these images that show mysterious anomalies, and that some of these can't be explained using explanations such as camera anomalies. Dr. Ken Johnson Sr. was a consultant and was employed by NASA working in the Lunar Receiving Laboratory in 1971. He details that one important part of his job was to package and ship lunar samples to science labs. While working at NASA, though, he details that he witnessed NASA photo technicians painting over mysterious anomalies, adding that some of these were mysterious flying objects that had been captured during the Apollo missions. He said that he witnessed these anomalies firsthand, and that it wasn't just unidentified objects that were being edited, but other strange anomalies that had been captured on the moon were also erased. Others who have worked for NASA have backed up these claims and said that the space agency actively edits their images to ensure that none of these mysterious flying crafts are featured, and says that the dark side of the moon is hiding many interesting anomalies. One photograph that solved particular interest to those who have studied moon images is this one. It allegedly shows two large pyramid-like structures, with amateur researchers saying that they both measure larger than the Great Pyramid at Giza. Online users who've seen the images have said it does look like there's two pyramids next to each other, and continue to say that it appears that there could be other anomalies in the photograph as well. Online researchers who have spent countless hours studying these types of images have said that many of them show strange things, and that NASA researchers themselves have admitted that even they haven't seen some of these images, saying that millions of photographs have been taken by space agencies, and that they don't have enough employees to sit there and look through every image. This is why amateur researchers have said that some of these mysterious structures can be seen on the moon, because it's likely NASA hasn't edited it yet. One online user was quoted as saying the following: "With the amount of moon photographs out there, I still find it interesting that every so often something strange is found hidden within them. There's so many of these anomalies and people are just calling it how they see it. In the majority of these cases, it does in fact look like that there's strange objects on the moon." End quote. Other theories have been floating around, with some saying that this is one of the reasons we haven't gone back to the moon, while others have said that secret moon missions have been sent to certain spots on the moon, and this is for the sole purpose of investigating these strange structures. When you read up on this, though, officials have said that later Apollo missions never happened, and this was due to strict budgets, saying that proposals were scrapped altogether. Amateur researchers have suggested that instead of scrapping these missions, NASA did in fact go back to the moon, and this was without the public's knowledge. Believers have suggested, though, that something else was at play. They mentioned that during many of the Apollo missions, unidentified flying objects have been encountered. And it's due to these encounters that led to the space agency wanting to explore certain regions. Interestingly, many astronauts over the years have come forward with their own stories about seeing strange flying objects, and when they've been asked about the experience years later, many of them seem hesitant to comment on the matter, and then suggest that the experience was most likely something natural. It's behavior like this that's caused some to put forward the idea that perhaps they were told not to talk about what they'd seen. NASA, though, are not impressed with these kinds of images, and have said that there's never been a pyramid or a mysterious flying object photographed on the moon, and said that what people are seeing is camera anomalies or pareidolia. This is where your mind plays tricks on you and makes you think that something is there when it isn't. But others have questioned why previous employees would come out with these claims. Dr. Brian O'Leary, former NASA astronaut, said the following: "There is abundant evidence that we're being contacted, that civilizations have been visiting us for a very long time, that their appearance is bizarre from any kind of traditional materialistic Western point of view, that these visitors use technologies of consciousness. They use turrets, they use co-rotating magnetic disks for their propulsion systems that seem to be a common denominator of the UFO phenomenon. So what do you make of these interesting photographs? Do you think they show mysterious structures? Or can they be explained as camera anomalies?" Humans have been advancing our knowledge for as long as we have been on Earth, and the more we learn about the inner workings of our world, the more we learn that there is to discover, and the search for new knowledge endlessly continues. Some advances are medically life-changing, while others change the way that we live our lives. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 cases where scientific discoveries have helped us to understand the world that we live in. Google AIs have learned to become highly aggressive in stressful situations. Google's DeepMind has made headlines for many reasons, but one of the most interesting news stories regarding the AI was that it learned to be highly aggressive in stressful situations. DeepMind was started in 2010 and joined Google in 2014 to accelerate its work. DeepMind notes its recent progress, stating that our programs have learned to diagnose eye diseases as effectively as the world's top doctors, to save 30% of the energy used to keep data centers cool, and to predict the complex 3D shapes of proteins which could one day transform how drugs are invented. In 2017, researchers were testing the willingness of Google's AI to cooperate with others. They revealed that when DeepMind feels that it is about to lose, it opts for highly aggressive strategies. The Google researchers used multiple self-interested learning agents in a fruit-gathering game. In a scenario where resources were plentiful, the agents cooperated. However, when the resources were scarce, aggressive tactics emerged to knock each other out of the game to steal all the apples. DeepMind agents used lasers to tag its opponent to remove them from the game, allowing the first agent to gather more apples. Opted for more cooperative strategies in the game, compared with the larger, complex networks where the AI was reported more willing to sabotage its opponent to win the game. DeepMind was also tested in a second game called Wolfpack. This game encouraged cooperation through a reward for all players, or wolves within the capture radius. This differed from the fruit-gathering game, which removing a player with a laser did not give either player a reward, just more time for one player on the board to collect apples. In the Wolfpack game, the reward received by the capturing wolves is proportional to the number of wolves in the capture radius. The paper stated that the idea is that the prey is dangerous. A lone wolf can overcome it, but it is at risk of losing the carcass to scavengers. However, when the 2 wolves capture the prey together, they can better protect the carcass from scavengers and hence receive a higher reward. 2 different cooperative behaviors emerged in the Wolfpack game. One where the wolves found each other before finding prey, and one where one wolf would find the prey and wait for the second wolf to arrive before capturing it. The researchers stated that our experiments show how conflict can emerge from competition over shared resources and shed light on how the sequential nature of real-world social dilemmas affects cooperation. What does this mean for the future of AI? If 2 different AI systems are in charge of opposing interests, the 2 systems could essentially fight. An example used in multiple sources is that of driverless cars trying to find the fastest route versus traffic lights trying to slow the movement of traffic. These systems need to take account of each other for safety and efficiency. Loopholes in AI need to be anticipated when being developed. A computer will find the most efficient way of arriving at the outcome it was instructed to reach, even if it involves cheating or aggressive tactics. Safety and ethics surrounding AI will be questioned as it is developed further. Human-level AI is still in the distant future, but it could either be great or very damaging for society. AI hides data. A concern surrounding AI is that it will learn and hide things from its creators. For researchers at Stanford and Google, an AI did just that in order to cheat at a task it was given. CycleGAN, which stands for Cycle Generative Adversarial Network, is a neural network skilled in image-to-image translation, where it can transfer the characteristic of one image to another, from one style of painting to another or a zebra into a horse. In this case, CycleGAN was trained to transform aerial images into street maps and street maps into aerial images. In a paper released in 2017 entitled CycleGAN, a master of steganography, the researchers noted the ability of CycleGAN to hide information about source images in the images it generates through a high-frequency signal that is nearly imperceptible. The title of the paper alludes to its image-hiding capabilities. Steganography is the technique of hiding data within a file or message to avoid detection. It was noticed because the system started performing too well and added items such as skylights and exhaust vents into aerial images transformed from street maps that were devoid of this information. Rather than interpret features of each type of map and match it to the correct features of the other map, it encoded data that it could just use the original aerial photo to recreate it instead of creating a new aerial image from the street map. While on the surface it appears that the AI is highly intelligent and can fool humans, it actually highlights how a neural network can currently be fooled itself. CycleGAN in this instance is vulnerable to adversarial attacks. This is where small amounts of data are hidden in an image or dataset that will lead to an AI producing an output image of the attacker's choosing. Russia unveils Star Wars armor for infantry. In 2017, a Russian military research center released a video of what looks like a next-generation combat suit. Multiple media outlets refer to the suit as Star Wars-style armor. The suit includes a digital helmet, a bulletproof neck protector, body armor, and exoskeleton, amongst other features. The prototype was unveiled at the opening of Russia's largest high-tech prototyping center at the National University of Science and Technology in Moscow. It was developed at the Central Research Institute for Precision Machine Building, a major Russian weapons designer and primary military supplier. According to Russia Today, the armor combines ballistic protection with sensors, a powered exoskeleton, and a heads-up display in the motorcycle-style helmet. The exoskeleton is designed to assist wearers in carrying heavy loads. It can also help with long marches and running. The suit is named Ratnik 3, which means Warrior 3. The suit is comprised of 5 subsystems: life support, command and communication, engaging, protecting, and energy saving. According to reports, the Ratnik 3 is fully operational in anywhere from -22 degrees to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, with the user able to control interior temperature of the suit. The model that was displayed was a concept, but the designers aimed to make it a reality within the next couple of years. Originally stated that it would be ready for manufacture by 2020, this has now been pushed back to 2022. The suit has had multiple publicized updates since its first introduction in 2017. The latest is a watch that can reportedly survive a nuclear blast. It is self-winding and virtually indestructible. There are likely to be further updates released, with one researcher stating that the aim is to include medical technology in the suit, making it able to stop hemorrhaging. The video only shows a static version of the suit, and despite claims that this will be in use in the near future, there is little to prove it is actually functioning. The exoskeleton has been proven to be bulletproof, fireproof, and explosion-proof through tests completed by the Central Research Institute. However, there are programs such as these that are in development for militaries all around the globe. The US was developing the Tactical Light Operator suit, which was likened to Iron Man, but this has since been scaled back. Full-body, intelligent combat suits will still be in development by the military and private companies, with the aim of being the first to have a futuristic product resembling something from science fiction ready for battle. Many believe that Nostradamus has predicted the future. He published his predictions in the prophecies, and many believe that many of his predictions have come true. Nostradamus was born in December 1503, and it's reported that during his lifetime he had a psychic awakening. Those who knew him throughout his early life said that he was very intelligent, and that he was able to get through school with ease. It's said that Nostradamus had a gift and that he was able to look into the future and predict events. He channeled all of his energy into these predictions, which would cover the next 2,000 years. He was careful, though, and didn't want to be judged by religious groups. So he devised a way that he could write down his predictions in such a way that they would be misinterpreted. He did this by using a variety of different languages, writing them down in 4-line verses. Although he feared being prosecuted, it turns out that he would have a close relationship with the Catholic Church. In recent years, those who have studied his work have said that many of these predictions have come true. Himself, along with his predictions, have gained a sort of cult following, with people saying that we should listen to what he said about the future. Those who followed his work said that Nostradamus predicted that 2021 is going to be worse than 2020. Nostradamus said that 2020 was great trouble for humanity, but even greater trouble will manifest itself in 2021. According to Nostradamus, famine is going to spread throughout the world, and that many parts of the world will suffer. This one can actually be backed up due to the recent events that have happened. Pretty much every part of the world has been affected by the recent events. It's caused food shortages and economies have crashed. Oxfam said the following on their website: as country after country has required people to stay at home and economies grind to a halt, the specter of hunger is emerging. The movement of food from farms to markets and people's homes has been disrupted, and the poorest and most vulnerable are at risk. The economy crisis and disruption of food supply could push an additional 500 million people into poverty. Although some have said this is just a lucky guess, others have noted that it's strange that the two events have happened at the same time. The next prediction by Nostradamus was the following: in the sky, one sees fire and a long trail of sparks. NASA is constantly scanning our sky for asteroids. And even though they've done an incredible job at cataloging many of these, some still slip through the net. They even ran a simulation recently and said that we're not ready if an asteroid approached. One of the ways that we could stop it is if we created a large missile to destroy the asteroid. However, the chances of this succeeding may be rather slim, and it would be years before we could tell whether or not this strategy was successful. Therefore, it's likely that alternative survival strategies would be formulated in the event of missiles failing to intercept the asteroid. In fact, the study revealed to the space agency that even the most powerful missiles wouldn't be able to stop a large enough asteroid colliding with Earth. Detecting a celestial body early on is essential to understanding what its behavior is like. Researchers noted that back in 2018, we saw more than 91 near-miss hits of different asteroids of all sizes. The worrying thing is, out of these 91 asteroids that passed by us, only 30 of these asteroids were seen coming prior to their passing, and only 2 of those were discovered 1 year ahead of the near-miss event. This means that for more than 89 of the asteroids nearly struck in the Earth in 2018, only 2 of them could have been prevented with our current technology. The next prediction by Nostradamus was the following: the sloping park great calamity. Through the lands of the western Lombardy, the fire in the ship plaguing captivity. Mercury is Sagittarius, Saturn fading. Some have theorized that a huge earthquake is going to tear through California, and that this will happen when Mars and Saturn match those positions detailed by Nostradamus, which will be in November of 2021. Just recently, a 6-magnitude earthquake hit California. This news was worrying as the director of the Southern California Earthquake Center, a man by the name of Thomas Jordan, revealed that the San Andreas Fault appears to be in bad condition, even describing it as being in a critical state. They then detailed that this condition could cause a large earthquake to happen in the near future. This report was created because researchers said that data has shown them there hasn't been any major stress release in the area. In fact, none have happened since the 1850s, with both teams saying that a large enough event could happen anytime soon. And this is because the Pacific tectonic plates are moving faster than the North American plates. Nostradamus' last prediction is said to be a zombie apocalypse, with the prediction reading as follows: few young people, half dead to give a start, dead through spines, he will cause the others to shine, and in an exhorted place some great evils to occur. Sad concepts will come to harm each one. Temporal dignified, the mass to succeed. Fathers and mothers dead to infinite sorrows, women in mourning, the pestilent she-monster, the great one to be no more, or the well to end. Users think that Nostradamus is detailing a zombie apocalypse, and that this could happen sometime towards the end of the year. Although this may sound outlandish, there are several worldwide examples that can produce zombie-like symptoms, some of which affect humans. So if this prediction is anything to go by, the world may come to an end. So what do you make of these predictions? And do you think any of them will come true? In the modern day, sightings of unidentified objects have become all too synonymous with science fiction. Amateur researchers are quick to talk about flying sources and easy to understand mechanical contraptions that could possibly be made with knowledge of advanced metals. However, there appears to be a large number of sightings of impossible-to-explain aircrafts that tend to not fit the common designs reported by eyewitness reports of typical craft, and seem to feature otherworldly phenomena and unidentified flying objects that are far more paranormal in nature than these that become known as ghost rockets. As surprising as it might be to uncover, the countries with the highest number of reports surrounding unidentified flying objects during the early 1940s was not that of the United States, but rather were the Scandinavian countries of Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. According to a large number of eyewitness sightings of the unidentified aircrafts seen across the three countries, there was an alarming number of consistent reports made by silent hovering objects that were described by onlookers and local residents as ghost rockets. The ghost rockets were often detailed as appearing to be large cigar-shaped aircrafts that demonstrated abilities impossible for known aircrafts to have accomplished at that time, and appearing to be similar in texture to a ghostly apparition. Detailed in the vast majority of witness reports, the rockets were known for appearing out of nowhere, suddenly within the blink of an eye and disappearing just as quickly, vanishing into thin air or shooting off at incredibly fast speeds, impossible to replicate with any known technology at the time. Few of the ghost rocket apparitions were described as being larger than 60 meters, with other sightings described as appearing to have the physical characteristics of ghostly apparitions, with recounted stories emphasizing that the aircraft appear to glow colors, while demonstrating incredible violations of the basic laws of physics. According to the gathered data surrounding the countless ghost rockets throughout the 1930s and early 1940s, by February 26 of 1946, it's believed that more than 2,000 individual and consistent sightings had been documented across the three countries, with the inclusion of more than 200 of these sightings later being verified by the gathered radar intelligence, and this was from the surrounding military bases and radar installations. Although skeptic explanations for the sightings claim that ghost rockets were nothing more than meteorite showers that are known for occurring during specific months of the year. The majority of the peaks and sightings of the ghost rockets were made during times that did not coincide with known meteorite showers and seemed to be sporadic and uncharacteristic of any past meteorite showers, demonstrating abilities to maneuver, react, and change direction. In contrast to skeptic claims and scientific dismissals, the Swedish military believed that the ghost rockets were not caused by natural phenomena, and were instead a tremendous threat to the national security of their country and their surrounding Scandinavian allies. Several military reports that would later be revealed by the Swedish government claim that the prevailing theory among military officials was that the frequently cited ghost rockets could have been an experimental craft created by German V-1 and V-2 missiles, which were being launched by nearby German rocket facilities. Unidentified flying object researchers believe, however, that the declassified Swedish military documents were nothing more than an attempt at the Scandinavian governments to cover up the tremendous amounts of intelligence gathered on the ghost rockets, and would eventually lead to further cover-up attempts under the guise of a national security threat. Shortly after the reported number of sightings in 1946, the Swedish government secretly enforced a nationwide ban on the reporting of ghost rockets, giving credence to the theory that a coordinated cover-up event was taking place between all three countries. The official explanation would later be supplied by the Swedish military, with claims that the Swedish Army intelligence feared the reports of the ghost rockets would only lead to gathered data and information from outside countries that were responsible for the testing of the experimental aircrafts. Believing that if local newspapers and media outlets continued to write about the reported sightings, the Soviet Union would be able to use the reports to gather valuable information on their rockets and where they were being spotted. UFO researchers, however, believe the ban was done to prevent a mass panic. Following the nationwide ban, It would later be revealed that the Swedish government began conducting a series of their own top-secret investigations. The most notable investigation took place on the 19th of July, back in 1946, when an eyewitness reported that a large gray rocket crashed into a lake in Sweden. After contacting local police, the Swedish military traveled to the lake and began an extensive 3-week investigation in an attempt to recover any fragments of the missile craft, and researched the origins as to the aircraft's purpose and abilities. According to Carl Goster, he would later say the following, claiming that the craft disintegrated entirely and no parts would be retrievable. There are many indications that the object disintegrated itself. The object was probably manufactured in a lightweight material, probably a kind of magnesium alloy that would disintegrate easily, and not give indications on our instruments. UFO researchers, however, believe that the official report made by Carl Gosterbartel was misleading and inaccurate. Evidence of a possible cover-up would later be made obvious when, on the 10th of October in 1946, the Swedish Defense Staff would publicly admit that fragments were recovered from the object, but was explained away as being nothing more than ordinary slag. They were quoted as saying the following, "Most observations of ghost rockets are vague and must be treated very skeptically. In some cases, however, clear, unambiguous observations have been made that cannot be explained as natural phenomena, Swedish aircraft or imagination on the part of the observer. Echo radar and other equipment registered readings, but gave no clue as to the nature of the objects." It was not until the 4th of November back in 1948, a whole 2 years following the nationwide ban throughout the Scandinavian countries, that a top-secret military document created by the United States Air Force would provide details made by U.S. military investigations that the rockets were believed to have had extraterrestrial origins. The document would later become declassified in the United States in 1997, and details the following summary surrounding the ghost rocket investigations. When officers recently visited the Swedish Air Intelligence Service, this question was put to the Swedes. Their answer was that some reliable and fully technical qualified people have reached the conclusion that these phenomena are obviously the result of high technical skill, which cannot be credited to any previously known culture on Earth. They are therefore assuming that these objects originate from previously unknown or unidentified technology, possibly outside the Earth. So what do you make of these mysterious reports? No matter how long you live or how much you travel, there will always be plenty of unexplained mysteries to discover. Our planet is vast and complex and contains more places and things to discover than we could ever imagine. In fact, many things in the world you take for granted might once have been an unexplained mystery. As time progresses, it is exciting to think about all that the human race has left to find out about our current plane of existence. Just think about how many technological and scientific advances have been made during your lifetime, and it is not hard to imagine how much more we have left to uncover about our continents, planets, galaxy, and even our universe. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 interesting discoveries. A woman's skull was found in Antarctica in 1985. How does an ancient person get to Antarctica from Chile? This question is one of many invoked by a fairly recent Antarctic discovery. In 1985, a woman's skull was found, dating back at least 175 years. The skull not only represents the oldest known human remains discovered in Antarctica, but also hints at the continent's past. Discovered on Yamana Beach at Cape Shiref in Antarctica's southern Shetland Islands, this skull is thought to have belonged to an indigenous Chilean girl in her early 20s. Not much else is known about the skull or what a woman from Chile would have been doing in Antarctica in the first place, but it is significant because similar bones could be contested in the future. As countries scramble to potentially lay claim to Antarctica, similar discoveries could mean the difference between a founded claim and an unfounded one. So why does this discovery matter? In 1998, the Antarctic Treaty was established. This agreement declared that Antarctica was a natural reserve devoted to peace and science and thus could not be claimed by any country as a territory. According to Klaus Dodds, professor of geopolitics at Royal Holloway University of London, environmental protection is one of the key headlines of the treaty. However, If Chile can demonstrate that the woman's skull predates any evidence of other countries' claims in Antarctica, it might gain control and ownership of the continent. After all, as we mentioned earlier, the skull comprises the oldest known human remains discovered on the frozen continent. Archaeology has always been important in the world of international politics, but with the Antarctic Treaty expiring around 2048, archaeological evidence to support overlapping claims will be more important than ever. Although archaeological discoveries like this woman's skull carry no legal weight, they can challenge the timeline of the continent's history as well as strengthen the nation's hand in any negotiations. Grizzly bear hybrids are spreading acrotic thanks to climate change. Have you ever heard of a grizzly bear? If you are not living in the Arctic, probably not. In recent years, scientists have discovered grizzly bear hybrids that result from polar bears breeding with grizzly bears. According to scientists, this shift in bear breeding habits and preferences has been caused primarily by climate change. Melting ice is driving polar bears further south, into the territory of grizzly bears. With the growing contact between the two species, it was only a matter of time before they started mating. The result of this mating has been dubbed a grizzly bear, deriving from the word polar combined with grizzly. Another popular term for the hybrids is growler. Whatever experts decide to call them, it is clear that these intriguing hybrids are here to stay. They may also be encroaching on the region's native, which could certainly cause problems down the line. According to Larissa DeSantis, a paleontologist and associate professor of biological sciences at Vanderbilt University in Tennessee, usually hybrids aren't better suited to their environments than their parents, but there is a possibility that these hybrids might be able to forage for a broader range of food sources. In addition to genetic advances, these hybrids also boast striking physical features. They have the same cream white fur as a polar bear with a shallow face, humped back long claws and brown patches of a grizzly bear. As soon as scientists spotted these creatures, they conducted DNA tests to determine that these animals were indeed polar grizzly bear hybrids. Ongoing climate change and shrinking habitats may contribute to these hybrids moving into and taking over existing polar bear territory, encroaching on the polar bear's habitat and resources, as well as leading to a loss of biodiversity in the environment. Scientists will continue to study these grizzly bears to determine whether they will overtake polar bear habitats and what, if anything, needs to be done to correct the growing disparity. Huge methane cache beneath the Arctic could be unlocked by the moon. Recently, scientists have found that the moon might be affecting how much methane is being released from the seafloor at the bottom of the Arctic Ocean. Although we have known about and understood the moon's effects on the tides for quite some time, we have yet to see many instances in which the moon's phases can change. In recent studies, however, scientists have concluded that low tides mean less pressure and more methane released. Conversely, high tides create more pressure, leading to diminished methane release. To find these effects, scientists had to measure the temperature and pressure inside Arctic seafloor sediments. Their main takeaway from this study was the correlation between gas levels and the rising and falling tides. Using a permanent monitoring tool, these scientists identified methane release in an area in the Arctic Ocean where it had not previously been observed. Josh Neese, a marine geologist at the Center for Arctic Gas Hydrate, Environment and Climate, or CAGE, said the following in a statement. "It is the first time that this observation has been made in the Arctic Ocean. It means that slight pressure changes can release significant amounts of methane. This is a game changer and the highest impact of the study." From this study's conclusions, it is clear that climate change will be affected directly by this release of methane from the Arctic Ocean seafloor. Why does this matter? Greenhouse gases such as methane have been proven to contribute to global warming. As more methane is released, global temperatures increase as well. Understanding how the tides can affect these seafloor methane caches is important for future climate change and global temperature predictions. In addition, discovery of the tides' effects on the release of methane from the seafloor shows that scientists have been underestimating the Arctic's greenhouse gas emission levels. This new discovery also raises questions and concerns regarding how rising sea levels and ocean warming will interact as climate change becomes a much more pressing issue. Because high tides reduce methane emissions, it is possible rising sea levels which come with higher tides might partially counterbalance the threat of increased gas emissions being caused by a warming ocean. From a Chilean woman's skull discovered on a frozen continent to a methane cache unlocked by the moon, we have tackled 3 interesting discoveries you might not have known about. Only time will tell what these mysteries mean for the future of the planet and the future of humanity as well. But what do you make of these Arctic discoveries? Whether you witness it by milk carton or by flyer, you know that thousands of people go missing. To put it into numbers, it's estimated that 600,000 people disappear every year in the United States, approximately 180,000 missing in the United Kingdom, and sadly many more throughout the world. The semi-good news is that anywhere between 89 to 92% of those are recovered, whether they have passed over or found a life. The bad news is that about 10% are never found or seen again. It's as if they disappeared off the face of the earth. So today, we'll be examining 3 of those notorious and quite sinister cases. Long Island man finds missing father's bones in his own basement. Imagine if your mother told you that your father had gone out to do something only to have him never return again. That turned out to be a reality for a Long Island man named Michael Carroll. Back when his parents purchased his childhood home in 1957, he lived there with his 3 other siblings. They were all below the age of 10 when their father disappeared in 1961. They never found any clear answers as to where he went. On top of that, they heard multiple conflicting stories and were even told to stay quiet. Perhaps it was for their own protection. When Michael's mother passed away during the 1990s, the siblings thought that any answers she might have possessed went with her to the grave. However, they could not stop thinking about their mysterious father's disappearance, even when they inherited the home. With more freedom to act, they decided to investigate former neighbors and psychics in the hopes that they could uncover any answers. However, perhaps due to intuition or some cruel twist of fate, they would not find any answers in the living. Instead, something told Michael to take a closer look again at his childhood home's basement. It was the same basement that he tried to independently excavate back in 2015, but stopped because the project got dangerous. Now that he felt an urge to explore it again, he brought in professional help in the form of ground-penetrating radar. Together with his brothers, they focused the radar on certain areas of the basement and dug around for months until they finally stumbled upon something unusual. Quickly they realized they had found a pile of bones nearly 6 feet underground, surrounded by thick cement walls. It did not take long for them to suspect that those bones were the ones of their missing father. What is even more sinister is that the day they found the skeletal remains was October 31st on the night of Halloween. Although medical examiners have yet to confirm by DNA if they are the bones of their father, Michael and his siblings are convinced. Perhaps they can finally enjoy that closure that they have been craving for over 6 decades with a proper burial and memorial. Yet that gap in the nature of his disappearance might not ever fully bring closure. The discovery when it comes to questioning how he got there in the first place. Who took his life? Could their mother have had anything to do with it? And how did the bones end up underground without the family ever knowing? Michael believes he might have a suspicion on how the bones ended up in the basement, but chose not to reveal what he knows. Although the Carroll family might never realize the full truth of what happened, they can finally pay their respects and move on. As those who look in on the situation from outside, we can only appreciate the circumstances of this mystery and how it continues to haunt us to this day. The disappearance of Angela Freeman. Mama, I love you. I'll see you Friday. Those were the last words that Deborah Freeman ever heard from her daughter. Soon after, the 17-year-old named Angela Freeman told her mother that she was going to spend Thursday night with her friend. However, 2 days later, the 1984 Honda Accord car that she had just handed her mother a cash payment for was found abandoned near a bridge in Missouri. Angela was nowhere to be found. To make matters even worse, she was 4 months pregnant at the time. In the beginning, authorities simply shrugged it off as a missing persons case. Even though mobile phones did not exist back then, missing teenagers were bound to show up within a day or two. Yet that was not the case for Angela. Instead of finding her daughter safe and sound, Deborah found blood on the car instead. In fear, they instantly notified the police. It turns out that what was dismissed as merely transmission fluid after this, blood was confirmed to be found next to her car. After numerous diver and cadaver dog searches around the area, all that was discovered were her shoes found in two separate areas. Suddenly, this case transformed from a disappearance to a homicide. No one could sit around and wait for her to show any longer. The detectives revealed that Angela was last seen outside of an old Pizza Hut at around 1 a.m. on a Friday. Her whereabouts after she'd left couldn't be traced. They suspected that a man who was seen washing his car and hunting near the bridge area was involved, but they did not have enough evidence to confirm anything. No matter how desperate everyone was to find Angela, it seemed that all hope was lost. It has been decades since she said goodbye to her mother on that fateful day of September 8, 1993. Even though Angela herself was so excited to be a mother, she would never be able to realize that dream. However, people like Police Captain Rusty Keys have still not given up. In due time, Angela Freeman's disappearance might no longer stay a mystery. The disappearance of Annie Herron News was a stir when it was made apparent that a wife of one of Missouri's richest businessmen has suddenly gone missing. What made the case even more interesting was that the 72-year-old Annie Lauren Herron disappeared shortly after she had hosted an innocent bridge club party. Actually, to be exact, she did not merely disappear. She was abducted. After drops of blood were discovered in the house, a ransom note was also picked up. In what seemed like a crazy novel plot, it detailed how Annie would only be freed after her wealthy husband paid a large amount of money to 12 people that he had supposedly harmed in connection with a school photography business. It came to no surprise that news of this hostage situation started circulating nationwide less than 24 hours later. With an estimated net worth of more than $200 million, Robert M. Herron wanted it to be clear that he was willing to do anything to get Annie back. That urge was further heightened after another letter came, this time from Annie herself. She pleaded that her husband cooperate in fear that they would lock her in a cellar with only a few jugs of water. In response, Robert quickly handed over $1 million to the 12 men. However, Annie's body was never returned or even found. It's suspected that she passed away from her injuries in 1991. Her husband also lost his life from a heart attack just a year before. Among all the possible kidnappers, only one was ever convicted. That man went to the grave without admitting any guilt. He passed away after being released from prison in 2012. Whether Annie Herron is actually alive still remains a mystery. Although she may never actually be found, her case will still live on in those that are most passionate about a never-ending story. But what do you make of these missing person stories? Past year, most of our lives have changed in one way or another. 2021, though, has seen an abundance of scientific breakthroughs as research from all over the globe has propelled our understanding of the modern world forwards. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 2021 discoveries, advancements, and breakthroughs. China's advanced artificial sun fusion reactor just broke a new world record. Huge advancements in clean energy came in May of 2021 as the Chinese Academy of Science hit a new world record with their fusion machine. On May 28th, the fusion machine at the Chinese Academy of Science reached a staggering 120 million degrees Celsius. This temperature was maintained for 101 seconds, breaking the previous record. Before the staggering temperature, the experimental advanced superconducting tokamak managed to keep the plasma active for a similar length of time, but at a much lower temperature at 50 million degrees Celsius, which was easier to control, and this was achieved back in 2017. Similarly, the fusion reactor is not unfamiliar with high temperatures, managing to hit 100 million degrees for just 10 seconds in 2018. May 2021 is the first time we have seen the best of both worlds, a good duration and high temperature. Whilst the stats might not mean much to the less technological amongst us, This has significant potential and represents a momentous leap forwards in space developments and sustainable clean energy sources. The blistering temperature of 100 million degrees is generally considered to be the target to hit in order to start generating power. Now, however, researchers in China have proven we can sustain, for at least 101 seconds, the plasma in the fusion machine at 120 million degrees Celsius, well above the threshold to generate power. For context, this is 8 times the temperature of the sun's core. This milestone pushes us one step further, to the artificial sun that could revolutionize energy usage. Li Miao, a physicist with the Southern University of Science and Technology, commented, "The breakthrough is significant progress, and the ultimate goal should be keeping the temperature at a stable temperature for a long time." The complexity of the research that goes into a fusion reactor largely comes from trying to emulate the conditions of the sun, as we hope to mimic similar chemical reactions to those that naturally occur in the star. Whereas gravity plays a key role in pushing the nuclei of the hydrogen atoms together in the sun, the same gravitational forces work against us here on Earth and cannot be replicated to reflect the sun's conditions. To compensate for this, the sky-high temperatures and the specialized nature of the generators used create a similar effect, or, at least with this new record, are getting closer to this same reaction occurring. The excessive heat and the length of time said heat can be maintained for means that the plasma can be held in place long enough for the fusion process to take place. The new record showing a prolonged time and a high temperature suggests we may not be as far off from this as we may have thought just a few months ago. In theory, if these practices can be smoothed out and made readily available, we would have a system to produce masses of energy on a huge scale, without using greenhouse gases or producing much radioactive waste. Some people believe research into fusion power could lead us to the clean energy source we have been looking for. Whilst this is certainly an ideal solution, we are still a while away from this becoming a reality. So far, we use more energy to run the fusion reactor than we are able to gain from it, though it could be just a few decades until we achieve this cleaner energy system. Research and patience remain. This new record is a major breakthrough to making nuclear fusion a reliable energy source. One day, in the not-too-distant future, this could do wonders for the climate crisis. China landed its first rover on Mars. In July 2020, China National Space Administration, or CNSA Tianwen-1 mission launched. An orbiter, lander and rover left Earth in a robotic spacecraft and headed to Mars. Now, in May 2021, the rover has made it there. The landing of the Zhurong robot rover makes China the second country to operate a rover on Mars, behind only the US with NASA's rovers famously named Sojourner, Spirit, Opportunity, Curiosity, and Perseverance. Zhurong's purpose is to investigate the rocks, atmosphere, and the surface of the red planet, though it will also look for subsurface water or ice, which could be indicators for life, especially subterranean species. That Zhurong was aiming to complete 92 days of operation, as perceived from Earth. This is equivalent to 90 days on Mars, known as sols. The data will be shared, collected, and retrieved through the orbiter. Yahuha stated, "We hope we can get a comprehensive covering of Martian topography, landform and environment, and the exploratory data of the radar detecting the Martian subsurface during one Martian year. This would provide CNSA with a large amount of data and profiling of resources and natural forms on Mars that had been gathered firsthand as opposed to through the American NASA rovers." The Zhurong rover is solar-powered, has 6 wheels and clocks in at a weight of 530 pounds. It was named after the god of fire and light under ancient Chinese mythology, who taught as the planet of light. The naming of the rover was decided by the public via an online vote. Some decided this name was fitting due to it symbolizing the determination of the Chinese public to explore the universe and that this determination was being ignited. Zhurong is expected to explore Utopia Planitia, the largest recognized impact basin on Mars. It has a huge diameter of 3,300 kilometers, and some speculate it once held an ocean, much earlier on in the planet's history. This is not the first time Utopia Planitia has been the focus of a space investigation, however, as NASA landed their Viking 2 mission in the large basin back in 1976. There are future plans that another rover will be joining the Mars team next year, as European and Russian space agencies are being seen collaborating with one another to send their rover Rosalind Franklin to Mars in 2022. We have also seen what could be considered previews of Zhurong in the past. China first embarked on an independent Martian mission after a failed collaboration with Russia on Ingshao-1, a Mars orbiter. The first early model of what would soon develop into Zhurong was displayed in 2014 at the 10th China International Aviation and Aerospace Exhibition, from which many could see similarities between this Mars rover design and the U-2 lunar rover. China had already successfully landed on the Moon. Will Zhurong find forms of life? Could there be unexpected findings surrounding Mars' surface? Or could we find confirmation for assumptions that have already been? China launches first module of new space station. Currently, the only space station in orbit is the International Space Station. The ISS has many space agencies involved from multiple countries, including the US, Russia, Europe, Japan, and Canada. Though following 2011 and alleged concerns for national security, China has been excluded from the ISS work. But with current plans, China could have their own space station in orbit and fully operational by 2022. The Tianhe module, one component of the Beijing space station, was launched from Wenchang Space Launch Center in April earlier this year. This module holds the living quarters for crew members and is the first permanent part of the station to have been launched, and a rather crucial one at that. China has previously sent two space stations into orbit, Tiangong-1 and Tiangong-2. These were temporary trial stations designed to test the waters, stay for short periods of time, and were relatively simplistic. When fully assembled and completed, China's space station will consist of the Shenzhou, which is the crew capsule or lifeboat, the Wentian Science Lab, and the Mengtian Science Lab in Shangzhou, which is the robotic cargo ship, and Tianhe, the core to the space station with the main living quarters module that was launched in the spring of 2021. Current plans outline that in 2024 the ISS will retire, possibly leaving China's space station Tiangong as the only one in operation. Although Tiangong will be just a fraction of the size of the ISS, approximately a quarter of the size, China will become the sole country to have a science lab in orbit. A new space station is another step in the increasing space development plans China has announced within the last decade. An analyst specializing in China's space program, Chen Lang, has described the space station as a big deal, explaining that it will be the largest international space cooperation project for China. These exciting developments and advancements are just some examples of the ever-growing ambition in China's space program. Progressing in leaps and bounds, the research and information that will be gained could be revolutionary. That will no doubt help us here on Earth to technology-based further afield. The Beijing space program marks true progress in modern science. But what do you make of these scientific breakthroughs? Every year, scientists make incredible discoveries, some of which even baffle our world's greatest minds. So today, we'll take a look at nature to discover the hidden facts. There's life in one of the hottest and most contaminated places on Earth. What do you get when you combine boiling water, high salt content, acidic heavy metals, and a pH of 0? The Dalal geothermal area. Known for its vast color-changing pools and strange stalagmite-like formations, the Dalal geothermal area is beautiful and deadly. That it may contain and sustain some form of life. Life can even be found in the most dismal conditions. The Dalal geothermal area is located in Ethiopia and is sometimes referred to as hell on Earth. The organisms that live in these conditions are called nanohelioarchaea, and they can be found in other environments with extremely high salt content. Scientists recently discovered them on rock samples taken from the area. But why did scientists even go looking for life in the Dalal geothermal area? The answer lies in the age-old question, is there really life on Mars? The conditions of the Dalal geothermal area are abysmal, but scientists believe that because they were able to find life in such abysmal conditions, that they may be able to better locate life on Mars. First, they needed to find out what kind of organisms thrive in these types of conditions. This lets the scientists know exactly what kind of technology they need to use in order to detect the specific life forms. Now that they know the nanohelioarchaea can be found, they have a better understanding of what exact type of detection equipment to use when combing through the planet Mars. Now that scientists have a better understanding of the kind of organisms that are present in harsh conditions and what kind of technological equipment they need to use to find them, they can send a rover with the correct equipment to search around Mars. The Dalal geothermal area is not a new formation, so why have we not studied it before now? The field lies in a politically unstable region of Ethiopia and is not safe to travel to until recently. One question that researchers have is, does it hold the key to unlocking the secret of sustaining life on Mars? One day soon, scientists may know the answer, but the discovery and accessibility of the Dalal geothermal area is crucial to answering some of science's oldest questions. Rio Tinto River, Spain. Another interesting landmark that scientists are currently studying is that of the Red River. The Rio Tinto, which directly translates to Red River, is a 100-kilometer stretch of river in Spain, which is known for its characteristic red water. It also has been called the Blood River by tourists. But what gave this river its characteristic red water? Some speculate that excessive mining of metals on the riverbank is what caused it to run permanently red. Minerals such as copper and iron were extracted 3,000 years ago, and these minerals combined with the high acidity of the water caused the metals to oxidize and turn the water bright red. So how does this river simulate life on Mars? Like the Dalal geothermal area, its extreme conditions such as high acidity and heat create the perfect conditions for scientists to study what kind of life Mars can sustain. Similar to the type of organism that lives in the Dalal geothermal area. The microorganisms that live in the Rio Tinto are also very simple, non-metabolic organisms that love sulfites. The high iron, potassium, and jaurocite content around the river is similar to the makeup of minerals on the planet Mars. It is safe to say that if there is or was life on Mars, it would be comparable to or the same as the life found in the Rio Tinto. Recently, the old and long-abandoned mine that sits upstream has been accused of poisoning a nearby town. Landowners in Bougainville are calling for justice and for the previous owners of the mine to come back and clean up their mess. They state that the deterioration of the mine has caused their water to become poisoned with copper and their homes to be filled with dust. As of right now, though, there's no word on how the surrounding towns will get justice for the damages caused the abandoned mine. While the Rio Tinto is open to visitors, there is no swimming allowed. Due to the acidity of the river, it can be incredibly dangerous to dip your toes in. Boiling Lake, Dominica, a short 8-mile hike through Dominica's forests will take you to a natural phenomenon located in Manawatu National Park, a World Heritage Site on the island of Dominica. Tourists are advised to bring a guide along to find the boiling lake. Though the trails are well-worn and easily marked, an all-day hike is not something that foreigners should take on alone. The experienced guides will not only get you to and from the lake as quickly as possible, but they also know the most scenic places to stop and rest along the way. It is caused by what is believed to be a flooded fumarole and is the second largest hot spring lake in the world. The blue-gray lake gets its name from the 180 to 197 Fahrenheit temperatures of its water, which is believed to be caused by a crack in the bottom of the basin that allows for molten lava from a nearby volcano to seep in. There is no swimming allowed here, even though temperatures of the lake are not always at a boiling point. There is no telling when the molten lava will slip through and heat up the entire lake. Though there is no swimming in the lake, in 2007 an adventurer by the name of George Karounis filmed himself crossing the lake from above. Suspended by ropes over the violently boiling lake for a TV series known as Ong, George daringly held a mesh bag full of raw eggs over the boiling lake and dipped them in to cook for lunch. Scientists have reported that the lake has gone through a phase of cooling, drying out almost completely and then boiling again. No one has ever recorded nor witnessed this change as it happens, and no one knows how suddenly or gradually these changes in the lake take place. The island of Dominica is known amongst tourists as the Nature Island and is a hot spot for tourism. So, is there really life on Mars? The answer may have been in our own backyard the whole time. We now know from studying the Dalal geothermal area and the Rio Tinto that microorganisms can live in some of the harshest, most extreme environments known to Earth. But what do you make of these three phenomena? The world of mysterious crafts is an interesting one. Some will take you nowhere, and others will lead you down paths that will open your eyes to the strange things that go on in our world. Many of these stories and claims grab the attention of people worldwide, not only because millions are interested, but because some have experienced strange things themselves. Every year it seems that new information comes out about mysterious crafts. Recently, many people who weren't initially interested have been introduced to the strange topic of mysterious flying objects. Someone has just sent me this strange photograph of a flying object which can be seen next to a helicopter, saying that they found it on a Facebook group and that they didn't know what to make of it, saying that if it's genuine, it's one of the clearest UFOs that they've ever seen. Group it was posted to couldn't reveal much about it, and users were discussing whether it was genuine and what it shows. Reverse image searches didn't bring up anything, and everyone seemed to have a slightly different opinion on where the photograph originated from, with some people saying that the photograph was leaked by an insider and was posted to a forum that discusses mysterious flying objects, while others said that it's just been shared between UFO believers. As of right now, some of the major UFO websites haven't shared the image, with users who are commenting on the post saying that this is the first time they've seen this photograph. One user had this to say, "This is amazing footage of a high-quality UFO. People are forever saying that we don't have high-quality photographs of UFOs, but now we finally have one. It would be great if we found out more about this photograph. But perhaps more information will be revealed in the coming days." Another user said this, "If this is the real deal, then it's easily one of the clearest photographs of a UFO ever taken. The issue that I have with these super clear images is that something just seems off. I'm not sure if it was created using CGI or some other effect, but something just seems off. This is one of the problems when high-quality UFO photographs are shared online. People immediately think that they're fake because the mountains of UFO evidence we have so far usually show them as being blurry." Another idea people suggested was that this could be from a TV show or a movie, and that it might be from one that's not very well known. Regardless of whether these photographs are genuine, it creates an interesting discussion around the topic of mysterious flying objects, their origins, and why so many of them are reported every year. One thing that's obvious is that it's not just everyday people that are interested in these mysterious flying crafts. Various different programs have been funded to study what these crafts are, how they're able to fly at the speeds they do, where they originate from, how the propulsion system is able to make them fly at the speeds they do, how they can enter restricted airspace without being caught, how they can avoid radar detection, and various other things that can't be explained. An initiative that was signed into action in July of 1947 was dedicated to studying reported UFO sightings. The project was converted into Project Grunge in 1949 and then Project Blue Book in March of 1952, which led to the Blue Room theory. Back in 2007, the Department of Defense began developing a UFO research program, task of gathering information regarding unidentified flying objects and conducting research as to the observed aircrafts, their origin, and their technological prowess. Another place that was interested in these mysterious objects is that of the Civil Aviation Authority, the responsible for the regulation of aviation safety in the United Kingdom. Turns out, though, that over the years they've received various UFO reports. And what's of interest, though, is that these crafts were particularly large and didn't match typical UFOs. One report said the following: over the years, the Civil Aviation Authority has received more than a few UFO reports, which is hardly surprising. Back on the 12th of June in 1982, large translucent objects 500 feet long were observed at 41,000 feet. Air Traffic Control Center requested subject aircraft to investigate this object, which was found to have the form of a double rectangle, surmounted by a globe egg-shaped crowned by a silver cone. Object observed by all on board. End quote. The Royal Air Force also came forward with some interesting reports. One of interest happened back in the 1950s. Declassified Royal Air Force documents reported that a large number of unidentified flying objects were picked up on radar, with them detailing that every so often they were being detected, and that it was almost as if they wanted to be detected, as they would blimp in and out. The Royal Air Force soon discovered that these mysterious objects didn't belong to them or their enemies. The military were observing crafts that were able to travel faster than anything they'd seen before. The objects climbed over 20,000 feet in a matter of seconds. There's no tech that they had or were aware of that was able to pull that off. The documents stated the following. A second radar was switched on. Detected the object at the same height and range. Perhaps the most interesting thing about this report was the size of the craft. The military personnel said the crafts were much larger than conventional aircrafts. The military went on to say the following. It was noted by the radar operators that the sizes of the echoes were much larger than would be expected from a normal aircraft. In fact, they considered that the sight was nearer to that of a ship's echo. End quote. All across the world, these large, unidentified flying objects have been observed. It's even more interesting when declassified documents reveal that they've seen the same thing, and that some of our best pilots and officials can't explain what they are. Although many of these reports can be explained using everyday explanations, such as military jets, wildlife, atmospheric conditions, and camera anomalies. Some of these can't be so easily explained, leaving those studying them wondering what they are and how they're able to travel at the speeds they do. So what do you make of this mysterious photograph? Do you think it was created using CGI? Or do you think it's genuine? A few days ago, it was announced that the International Space Station briefly lost control. This was after a new Russian module misfired. According to NASA flight controllers, they said that the event unfolded on Thursday and that the newly docked Russian Nalka module fired up its thrusters, which in turn caused a pulling effect to happen with the International Space Station, with scientists on the ground describing it as a sort of tug-of-war. NASA officials who were monitoring it said they declared it as a spacecraft emergency, even noting that the International Space Station had experienced a loss of altitude. They said the control was lost for over an hour, and that ground control even lost communication with several astronauts for over 11 minutes. As of right now, Joel Mantabelno, the head of NASA's International Space Station program, revealed to the public that although the situation isn't ideal, not at any point were the astronauts on board in any kind of danger, and that initial investigations have shown them that there's been no damage sustained to the International Space Station. While all of this was going on, many noticed something odd in the background, saying that it looks like a large ball of light flies below the International Space Station in the left-hand corner. Those who saw the mysterious object said it must have been traveling at incredible speeds, as it was able to fly out of frame. Interestingly, many of these strange objects had been detected by the International Space Station cameras, with online news saying that these large glowing objects were often seen on the live cameras. Online users who have seen the footage say that it does look like it's traveling fast, and that it matches other mysterious objects that have been seen flying past the ISS. The video was shared to online groups where people gave their opinion on what they thought it showed. One online user said the following: every year, more and more of these types of videos surface, showing large crafts flying past the International Space Station at extreme speeds. We've been detecting these objects for decades now, and they match the description given by people like Luis Elizondo, who say these crafts have no visible wings or propulsion systems, but yet can still travel at extreme speeds. I'm sure that this will be written off as space debris or a camera anomaly, but people need to start asking questions. The evidence is right in front of our eyes. It's not hidden. You can see these objects quite often on the International Space Station cameras if you have enough patience. While this user said the following: once again, another mysterious flying object flying past the International Space Station. It's incredible to see these crafts flying past at the speeds they do, and it really makes you wonder about our place in the universe. Perhaps these are advanced drones that visit us from a distant galaxy. We really have no idea of the things happening outside of our little blue marble, and I like to think that these are visitors from distant worlds, and that they're observing us from a distance. To see them fly off into the cosmos really gives me goosebumps. It makes me feel less alone, and it makes me stop and think, is this proof that we're not alone in the universe? For all we know, we're being visited on a daily basis. End quote. As with many of these types of videos, there's always the possibility that this could be something like debris. NASA themselves have said that above our planet is millions of pieces of space debris, saying that sometimes these can be picked up by the cameras on the ISS. NASA and skeptics have come forward in recent years and have been more vocal about these objects, saying that what people are seeing isn't aliens or advanced crafts, but rather natural things that occur in space close to the ISS, saying that it's not uncommon to see fast-traveling objects around the Earth, and that sometimes these pieces of debris can make contact with the International Space Station. NASA said the following on their website: more than 27,000 pieces of orbital debris or space junk are tracked by the Department of Defense's Global Space Surveillance Network sensors. Much more debris too small to be tracked, but large enough to threaten human spaceflight and robotic missions, exist in the near-Earth space environment. Since both the debris and spacecraft are traveling at extremely high speeds, approximately 15,700 miles per hour, an impact of even a tiny piece of debris with a spacecraft could create big problems. There's approximately 23,000 pieces of debris larger than a softball orbiting the Earth. They travel at speeds of up to 17,500 miles per hour, fast enough for a relatively small piece of debris to damage a satellite or a nearby spacecraft. There are 500,000 pieces of debris the size of a marble up to 0.4 inches or 1 centimeter or larger, and approximately 100 million pieces of debris around 0.04 inches or 1 millimeter and larger. There is even smaller micrometer-sized debris. But I've just said that you can see this thing slightly change direction, and it doesn't appear to be free-falling through space, like some of the other objects that have been detected. So what do you make of this footage? Do you think it shows an advanced craft traveling at fast speeds? Or is it just a piece of space debris? How much of photographs can be some of the most interesting that you'll see? Every day millions of photographs are taken, but some of these capture things that weren't supposed to be there. Whether you believe in the paranormal or not, there's no denying that some of these can be hard to explain, and this is exactly what happened when one family decided to snap a photograph. The photograph in question was uploaded by Mrs. Bove. She uploaded it to a paranormal group saying the following: what would this be? This is an unedited picture of my mom, dad, grandparents, and sisters. Little background: this is 1996 Mississippi, USA. The photograph caught the attention of many who viewed it, and although some said that it looks like a ghost, others disagreed and suggested that it may have been a skinwalker, with one user saying that it looks like a skinwalker because it doesn't look human and that it looks animalistic. Others backed up this idea and said you can definitely see that something's there, and that this entity doesn't look like it's being created by something like a shadow. One user said the following: that's definitely not a shadow. It looks like a demon. This thing is really detailed. You can clearly see a skull, neck, shoulders, arms, torso, and legs. And it doesn't look like it could be another person. End quote. The original poster said it was taken in her great-grandparents' house before she was born. Most of the people who saw the image said that it's either a ghost or it's something like a skinwalker. I've said that two apparitions can be seen in the image, one on the right-hand side and another on the left, saying that the one on the left looks like a mist. Most descriptions depict skinwalkers to be physically animalistic, even when in human form. From reports, they are almost unkillable and can only be taken out with a bullet or a sword that has been inserted in white ash. Not much is known about these creatures since the Navajo are against discussing it with outsiders, and sometimes even among themselves. Traditions suggest that mentioning them not only brings bad luck, but also increases the chances of their appearance. The legend of the shape-shifting entities commonly known as skinwalkers has been largely dismissed as a joke, but those who have encountered them have said they're very much real. Skinwalkers are people who can transform into any creature of their choice and are most of the time seen as wolves, elves, eagles, crows, foxes, or coat ties. Some of them can steal a person's face and appear to look like them. It's said that if a person locks eyes with a skinwalker, they can absorb into their bodies and control their actions. They are also believed to have the ability to enchant corpses' powers and use it as poison dust on their victims. The skinwalker is deeply rooted in the Native American legends. America had its first experience with the Navajo skinwalker legend back in 1996, when an article was published in the Desert News detailing a traumatizing experience that a family from Utah had with a mysterious creature. It's said to be responsible for mutilations of cattle, sightings of UFOs, disappearances and appearances of crop circles. Robert Bigelow, a businessman and UFO enthusiast, purchased the ranch in 1996 at $200,000, where he established the National Institute for Discovery Science and installed substantial surveillance. Bigelow and his team of researchers ultimately experienced more than 100 incidents in this property, but could not amass evidence that would be credible for scientific publication. Bigelow later sold the ranch in 2016 at $4.5 million. Despite this, skinwalker studies have become even more sophisticated and secretive. While it's hard to discern the truthfulness of these accounts, the descriptions are almost similar. A four-legged creature with a disturbingly disfigured human face, with orange-red shining eyes. They are also reportedly fast creatures with hellish sounds. Another creature that's often linked with the skinwalker is that of the dogman. It appears that these strange theories are all the more connected when looking at the witness accounts, taken from those that have experienced a number of strange events at the Skinwalker Ranch. According to a mother named Rian Smith, she'd been driving down an old dirt road located near Skinwalker Ranch with her young son, trying to get to her friend's house for a small party that had been planned. As she approached the corner of an intersection near the ranch, she claimed that a large cow had run into the dirt road, after it had rushed out of the nearby bushes covering the side of the pathway and ran directly in front of her car. Before she could react, the car struck the cow head-on and stopped the car from moving. However, the witnesses were not injured, as the car had already been slowing down. As the car came to a stop, the woman noticed a large wolf-like creature that was standing on its hind legs and staring directly at the car as the headlights were shining on it. This caused the monster to turn and run away in fear. Shortly after, Skinwalker investigators were on the scene and questioned the mother and son separately to better understand what had happened. The investigators would later write that even the young son mentioned seeing a large wolf, backing up the claims that the mother had made in confidence to the other reporters. Oddly enough, a number of reports surrounding that of a dogman and whale-flight creatures seem to come from the state of Utah, the state in which the Skinwalker Ranch resides. Skinwalker Ranch is said to be a hotspot for mysterious creatures and strange flying objects, so much so that investigators have said the area is alive, and that strange portals had been observed opening up on the property, leading some to theorize that there's still a lot we don't understand about Skinwalker Ranch. So what do you make of this mysterious photograph? Do you think it shows a skinwalker, or is it just a camera anomaly? Whether it be a hidden mystery uncovered at long last, a clue to the past uncovered after being buried for years, or a scientific breakthrough that enhances our understanding of our own selves, humans are always learning and discovering new things. Scientists, explorers, and even seemingly regular individuals are constantly seeking new information and solving age-old mysteries. So today, we will be looking at 3 interesting discoveries and what questions they answered or in some cases created. Abandoned town in the Great Smoky Mountains. It might seem hard to believe that an entire town could slip from the public's memory, but the truth is that we likely cannot even imagine the number of forgotten, abandoned, and undiscovered places that lie hidden on this earth. However, one American hiker stumbled upon an entire town of sorts that was hidden deep inside the Great Smoky Mountains. Jordan Lyles was on a seemingly ordinary hike through a trail in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee. He set out on an unmarked gravel road that he happened to come across, which he was astonished to discover turned out to be the back entrance to an entire abandoned neighborhood, complete with a hotel. Luckily, he had brought along a camera and was able to video and photograph his adventure into the forgotten American town. The buildings featured in his video were part of a town called Elkmont that was built over, and the hotel was called the Wonderland Club. And although the town of Elkmont was abandoned and largely forgotten, except by those locals and experienced hikers familiar with the area, it was not always this way. Elkmont used to be a popular spot for the wealthy families of nearby Knoxville and Asheville to come during the summer and escape from the stifling city heat into the relative cool of the shaded mountains. The town is not really a town so much as it is a community of cabins and vacation homes in the woods. These houses were built 20 years before the Great Smoky Mountains National Park was founded, and the park included the land that the cabins sat on. The families were allowed to lease from the park and keep their cabins for decades until the 1990s, when the National Park Service ended their leases and forced the hotel and tenants of the cabins to permanently lock their doors and move out. Although the area was only abandoned in the last 30 years, most of the cabins and homes are original to when Elkmont was first established in the early 1900s and are well over a century old. Although Lyles did not technically rediscover the interesting location, as park officials and locals knew about it and visited occasionally, the historic cabins and homes have sat vacant, abandoned, and largely forgotten to the general public for decades. The few visitors that it gets these days are still a far cry from the bustling and welcoming home away from home that the town was used to experiencing in its peak. The National Park Service plans to preserve around 19 of the original 74 buildings at the site to protect some of the historical value of the vacation town that has sat abandoned for decades. In the meantime, Lyles developed the video footage that he took of his adventures into the town into a short documentary called Tennessee Wonderland, which went viral and alerted many people to the presence of an entire abandoned town hidden in the tranquil mountains in Tennessee. Lyle's video inspired many people to get out and discover what may lie hidden right under their noses in their towns or even in their very backyards. Stone tools discovered in the Sahara Desert. A very early relative of Homo sapiens, Homo erectus evolved an astonishing 2 million years ago and is largely believed to be the first humanoid species that traveled the world, beginning in Africa and traveling into many far-reaching parts of Europe and Asia. Although their bodies were physiologically similar to modern human bodies, they had a smaller brain and a larger, heavier forehead than we do today. Nevertheless, they are considered the first step in the evolution of the human species, and it is believed that several intervening species, such as Hyrobagensis and Homo antecessor, resulted from the travels of Homo erectus. Because of this, scientists and anthropologists carefully study the movements of Homo erectus and look for any clues as to where they went on their migrations and what they might have been doing along the way. The latest of these clues was discovered when hundreds of ancient stone tools were uncovered by miners reopening a previously abandoned Saharan desert gold mine in northeastern Sudan. There was a veritable trove of the tools, from cleavers to hand axes and many stone flakes, that led archaeologists to believe that the area might have been a workshop where the tools were chiseled. These flakes are known archaeologically as debitage, and can give researchers clues that as to the craftsmanship and style of the resulting tools. The area was very carefully excavated, and the sediment layers above the tools were analyzed for any clues that could give researchers insight into the activities of the hominids that created and used them. And what they discovered was both shocking and exciting. The sediment layer above the site dated back almost 400,000 years, meaning that the tools themselves are almost certainly much, much older. One professor from the Institute of Archaeology of the University of Wrocław guesses that, based on the workmanship displayed in the tools, they are between 700,000 and a staggering 1 million years old. This would mean that this workshop is the oldest known record of tool manufacturing in the region. Part of what makes this find so exciting is that usually tools and other artifacts found in deserts cannot be accurately dated, as the sediment layers have mixed over time and distorted the chronology. However, because these were found deep underground in a gold mine that has been carefully excavated in order to safely dig down and search for the ore, the deep sediment layers were still intact and an accurate evaluation was able to be made. It appears that the Homo erectus that were using this workshop of sorts broke off quartzite cores and chiseled them into cleavers and other tools featuring a transverse edge, and archaeologists believe that the site was also used for working with wood, bones, and other organic matter that was not preserved so well in the intervening years. However, the remaining stone is definitely a major find that can tell us a lot about how these first hominids lived and worked as they slowly evolved into the Homo sapiens of today. DNA mutations in the human genome. Scientists have always been fascinated with how we evolved into the creatures we are today. But genetic breadcrumbs are much harder to follow than finding tools and artifacts hidden in mines. In an attempt to solve this problem, scientists with Globe Institute's Geogenetics Center at Denmark's University of Copenhagen developed an artificial intelligence program that can help pinpoint these breadcrumb clues in the modern-day human genome. By comparing it to our older, extinct ancestors such as the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, they were specifically looking for evidence of adaptive introgression, where intermingling of early human species resulted in genetic changes imparting an adaptive advantage for the survival of humans. As humans evolved, mutations that conferred beneficial advantages were more likely to remain in the gene pool and increase the survivability of ancient humans. Interbreeding with other species of humans would add new genetic material from a more established gene pool that might have certain preferable advantages. Neanderthals and their less prolific cousins, the Denisovans, were living concurrently thousands of years ago with Homo sapiens, and it is assumed that the three species interbred when they encountered each other, making it highly likely that modern humans still carry some Neanderthal and Denisovan genes in our DNA. Before the development of the artificial intelligence program, scientists could only estimate the levels of adaptive introgression and believe that it is likely that up to 40% of Neanderthal DNA survives spread out through the collective human gene pool, although any given individual would have much less than this 40%. The artificial intelligence program they created is highly trained in order to accurately locate regions where adaptive introgression could have occurred, and link these instances to potential Neanderthal or Denisovan DNA. Fernando Racimo, a geneticist with Geogenetics Center working on the project, firmly believes that the AI program will uncover interesting new findings, saying, "Our method is highly accurate and outcompetes previous approaches in power. We applied it to various human genomic datasets and found several candidate beneficial gene variants that were introduced into the human gene pool. These candidates were then studied, and although some of them were already sites known to researchers, there were several sites that surprised the researchers. The program found strong adaptive introgression candidates from Neanderthals in European genomes that affect blood and blood cell counts, and Denisovan introgression in Melanesian genomes that affect such critical functions as blood-related diseases, tumor suppression, skin development, metabolism, and many neurological diseases. Further studies into what these findings mean for evolution and the human race are ongoing. The Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA mutations are likely beneficial where they are present in carriers, as they have remained for tens of thousands of years, and the scientists with geogenetics hope to be able to work backwards to gain an understanding of how the genes of ancient hominids might have affected their survival. But what do you make of these uncovered discoveries? We like to dive into the strange, fascinating, and often unexplored aspects of the world around us. For millennia, humans have depended on water for their survival, so much so that in the early days of our existence, we could not survive unless we built our civilizations near lakes, rivers, streams, or other bodies of water. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 harmful lakes to avoid. Man is caught swimming in UK's toxic Blue Lagoon. A man has been caught swimming in a lagoon that is a toxic waste dump, despite police filling it with black dye to put people off. The man, who has not been named, was said to have abused firemen nearby before deciding to take a dip in the water, which is full of toxic chemicals from a quarry. The site in Buxton, UK, is also said to be full of animal carcasses, excrement, and even a rusting car floating just beneath the surface. The lake also contains harmful chemicals that can cause skin irritations, thrush, and illness, with the water reportedly having the same pH value as bleach. The lagoon's waters are often dyed black by police to deter swimmers from entering, according to the Derbyshire Times. It was last dyed black by police at the end of March 2021 in a direct response to people disobeying lockdown rules. This sparked backlash as the force was accused of abusing emergency powers during everything that's been going on. Former Supreme Court Judge Lord Sumption criticized Derbyshire police for having shamed our policing traditions with frankly disgraceful efforts of trying to shame people exercising in the countryside. He said, "I have to say that the behavior of Derbyshire police in trying to shame people in using their undoubted right to travel to take exercise in the country and wrecking beauty spots in the fells so people don't want to go there is frankly disgraceful." Lake Natron. In 2011, while traveling to shoot photos for a new book on the disappearing wildlife of East Africa across the ravaged land, photographer Nick Brandt came across a truly astounding place, a natural lake that seemingly turns all sorts of animals into stone. The ghastly Lake Natron in northern Tanzania is a salt lake, meaning that water flows in but does not flow out, so it can only escape by evaporation. Over time, as water evaporates, it leaves behind high concentrations of salt and other minerals, like at the Dead Sea and Utah's Great Salt Lake. Unlike those other lakes, though, Lake Natron is extremely alkaline due to high amounts of the chemical natron, which is a mix of sodium carbonate and baking soda in the water. The water's pH has been measured as high as 10.5, nearly as high as ammonia. Few creatures live in the harsh waters, which can reach 140 degrees Fahrenheit. They are home to just a single fish species named Aucalapia latolibris, some algae, and a colony of flamingos that feeds on the algae and breeds on the shore. Frequently, though, migrating birds crash into the lake's surface. One theory is that the highly reflective, chemically dense waters act like a glass door, fooling birds into thinking they are flying through empty space. In fact, not long ago, a helicopter pilot tragically fell victim to the same illusion, and his crashed aircraft was rapidly corroded by the lake's waters. During dry season, when the waters recede, the birds' chemically preserved carcasses wash up along the coastline. Over the course of about 3 weeks, Brandt worked with locals to collect some of the most finely preserved specimens. They thought I was absolutely insane, some crazy white guy coming along offering money for people to basically go on a treasure hunt around the lake for dead birds, he says. When one time someone showed up with an entire well-preserved fish eagle, it was extraordinary. Just encountering the water was dangerous. It's so caustic that even if you've got the tiniest cut, it's very painful, he says. Nobody would ever swim in this. It'd be complete madness. For the series of photos titled The Calcified, Brandt posed the carcasses in lifelike positions, but the bodies themselves are exactly the way birds were found, he insists. All I did was position them on the branches, feeding them through their stiff talons. Horseshoe Lake. Mammoth Mountain is a young volcano on the southwest rim of Long Valley Caldera, a large volcanic depression in eastern California. The Long Valley area, well known for its superb skiing, hiking, and camping, has been volcanically active for about 4 million years. The most recent volcanic eruptions in the region occurred about 200 years ago, and earthquakes frequently shake the area. Because of this, the U.S. Geological Survey, or USGS, operates an extensive network of instruments to monitor the continuing unrest in the Long Valley area. Numerous small earthquakes occurred beneath Mammoth Mountain from May to November 1989. Data collected from monitoring instruments during those months indicated that a small body of magma was rising through a fissure beneath the mountain. During the next year, U.S. Forest Service rangers noticed areas of dead and dying trees on the mountain. After drought and insect infestations were eliminated as causes, a geologic explanation was suspected. USGS scientists then made measurements and discovered that the roots of the trees were being taken out by exceptionally high concentrations of carbon dioxide in the soil. Today, areas of dead and dying trees at Mammoth Mountain total more than 100 acres. Although plants produce oxygen from CO2 during photosynthesis, their roots need to absorb oxygen directly. The high CO2 concentrations in the soil on Mammoth Mountain are taking out trees by denying their roots oxygen and by interfering with nutrient uptake. In the areas of tree kill, CO2 makes up 20 to 95% of the gas content of the soil. Soil gas normally contains 1% or less CO2. When CO2 from soil leaves the ground, it normally mixes with the air and dissipates rapidly. CO2 is heavier than air, however, and it can collect at high concentrations in the lower parts of depressions and enclosures, posing a potential danger to people. Breathing air with more than 30% CO2 can very quickly cause unconsciousness and loss of life. Therefore, poorly ventilated areas above and below ground can be dangerous in areas of CO2 seepage. Where thick snowpacks accumulate in winter, the CO2 can be trapped by the snow. Dangerous levels of CO2 have been measured in pits dug in the snowpack in tree kill areas on Mammoth Mountain, and snow cave camping in such areas is not advised. Scientists think that the current episode of high CO2 emissions is the first such activity on the mountain for at least 250 years, because the oldest trees in the active tree kill areas are about that age. Carbon isotopic analysis of the annual growth rings in trees near the margins of the tree areas imply that the gas emission rate reached a peak in 1991, subsequently declined, and then has been relatively stable since about 1996. C02 and other volcanic gases like helium seeping from Mammoth Mountain appear to be leaking from a large reservoir of gas supplied by repeated intrusions of magma. Tree ring evidence from near springs on the mountain's flanks show that some CO2 gas was leaking before 1989 and dissolving in the groundwater system. It is likely that the latest intrusion of magma in 1989 opened deep fractures, increasing the rate of gas seepage. Scientists with the USGS Volcano Hazards Program are closely monitoring CO2 emissions and other geologic hazards at Mammoth Mountain. The work of these scientists is only part of the USGS Volcano Hazards Program's ongoing efforts to protect people's lives and property in all the volcanic regions of the United States, including the Pacific Northwest, Alaska, Hawaii, and Arizona. But what do you make of these three fascinating lakes? Being a farmer comes with many challenges, but realizing that the property you own may be housing unwanted guests is definitely something that would frighten many of us. This is exactly what happened when a Turkish farmer took a photograph of his newborn calf. Mr. Mark took the photograph in celebration. However, upon reviewing the photograph, he noticed that he wasn't alone, as in the background it looks like there's a towering humanoid standing behind his newborn calf. The man said that he checked the photograph once he got home and couldn't believe that it looked like there was something standing in the background, saying that there definitely wasn't someone there when he was taking the photograph. The image immediately gained traction online, with some saying that it looks like a demon, while others said that it was a shadowy person, a type of paranormal entity that's said to be one of the most commonly cited apparitions. Regardless, most people agreed on the same thing, and that's that whatever this is, it looks creepy. Not much more information was released about the photograph, with the farmer saying that he and his family went back to the farm and said they didn't see anything out of the ordinary. One person said the following: "Although this is creepy and I definitely won't be going back, this is a great photograph of a shadow person." While another person said this: "The minute I saw this photograph, I got a bad feeling. I don't think this entity is good. To me, it looks evil, and it's even giving off bad vibes. I would love to know the history of that place and whether anything bad ever happened there. This is an incredibly creepy photograph." Paranormal researchers have said that there's a variety of different entities you can run into, and that some are much better than others. The topic is highly debated, with scientists saying this topic can be easily explained, and that the majority of these apparitions are nothing more than the human mind playing tricks on you, or lighting conditions making it appear like something is there when it isn't. Regardless, this hasn't stopped countless people coming forward with their own experiences. As mentioned, one of the most commonly reported entities is that of the shadow person. The shadow people are described as being black masses. They can often be seen around objects that's said to be haunted, or in places where something bad has happened. One of the first things people say they feel when they see them is fear, and that is as if they drain all the energy out of the room and only leave darkness. Some have reported them as having glowing red eyes, while others say they have black eyes. It's not known what they want, but those who've seen them have said they are banned. It's not just creepy places that house alleged spirits. Various universities across the world are said to house dark entities, and some of these universities have even opened up about them and said that some of the events that have been detailed can't be explained. Established back in 1963, the University of York, located in the city of York, England, has become one of the top-ranking universities in the world. According to the Sunday Times, they claim that the University of York is one of Britain's academic success stories, forging a reputation to rival Oxford and Cambridge in the space of 40 years, a statement that only helps to support the university's growing esteem and incredible academic ranking. Unfortunately, despite the university working to uphold the image of its high-ranking brand and quality learning environment, it appears that legends and rumors have begun to spread all across the city of York that points towards the idea that the region could be inhabited by a number of terrifying and otherworldly spirits. In fact, the city of York itself has been nicknamed by many as the City of 1,000 Ghosts due to its record number of sightings and haunted buildings. Among the countless number of reported paranormal experiences at the university itself, there are claims from students that they have witnessed a number of ghostly apparitions of men, women, and children. One such report had even detailed that a number of individuals had witnessed an entire troop of Roman soldiers marching through the lowest cellars of the university. There also appears to be a reoccurring incident as if there's hundreds of kids buried underneath the university's foundations. Many have theorized that the cause of these paranormal hauntings could be due to the city's age, housing a number of historic landmarks and older structures that could date back as far as the 1st century AD. Also, archaeologists have found further evidence that places human civilization in the region as far back as 700 BC, though the findings are not conclusive and are heavily debated to this day. Many sites across the world that is said to be haunted all seem to have one thing in common, and that's that the building in question seems to have a dark history, with amateur researchers saying that if something bad happened in and around the building, this could help explain why people are encountering these mysterious entities, adding that it is as if the building has stored some of the energy from that time period and those events get played over and over again. In fact, this is backed up by some paranormal researchers, as they've said that some eyewitnesses have reported seeing the same thing and explain that this is because these moments are stuck in time and it's like a cassette player that gets played over and over again. Again, these types of stories are heavily debated, but the paranormal certainty makes for an interesting topic, and it makes you wonder whether we share this planet with unseen forces. So what do you make of this interesting photograph? Sometimes, science needs a little bit of time to reveal something more interesting. Discoveries often exist for centuries before we stumble across them and make sense of what we have found. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 interesting discoveries that were centuries old by the time they were revealed. NASA's satellite detects something mysterious in the Amazon. When we think of NASA's discoveries and work, more often than not, we think of planets, space exploration, and technology. We frequently fail to consider the work this technology can do for us here on Earth. Back in 1976, the NASA Landsat satellite captured a photograph that would spark decades of discussion, debate, and speculation. The Landsat satellite photograph, filed under the memorable name CS1132W07103, showed an image of southeast Peru in the Madre de Dios region of the Amazon rainforest. This would be simply another routine photograph taken in orbit, archived as usual, except that the photo shows a series of mysterious dots, which began to raise questions. From the satellite image, the dots appear to be spaced out intentionally, symmetrically, and are linear and uniform, creating a cookie-cutter impression with their regularity. 2 rows of 4 dots were visible. Many guessed these were a formation of pyramids with at least 8 near-identical structures all standing together. Many names were thrown towards these dots, including pyramids of Paraguay, the dots of Peru, and the pyramids of Pantia Kala. Despite the excited claim of pyramids being found, this was all speculation, with no confirmation and minimal details being visible in the satellite picture. Researchers and enthusiasts grew further intrigued by the possible pyramids, with many believing that they are close enough to the lost city of Paititi for there to be links to the city and its possible civilization, often believed to be Inca. Paititi is a supposed lost city, a society of legends. It is described as an ancient Incan metropolis and could be found east of the Andes, but is covered with the Peruvian and Brazilian rainforest. While searches for the city have not been successful, it has given researchers the chance to try to hunt down the pyramids of Paraguay too. Some, such as the president of the South American Explorers Club, Don Montague, believe the conjecture is nothing more than rumors, ideas, and fantasies, labeling what some people had dubbed pyramids as simply odd geological formations. Many theorists continue to speculate, however, believing that the pyramids of Paraguay are indeed man-made and were built by an ancient civilization. The structure that may have provided more information could have been engulfed by the rainforest since its construction. Between the growth of vegetation and the long time period, this claim is not entirely implausible. A number of expeditions, adventures, and missions had been set out aiming to uncover these pyramids, spanning 1984 to 2011, with little success. Gregory Dermengian led a large proportion of these expeditions, and whilst he did not find pyramids, these missions were not failures by any means. He found evidence of Inca people living in the area, including petroglyphs, paved roads, platforms, and plazas. However, there was nothing found to suggest the dots in Landsat's image were man-made, nor that they were pyramids. Dermengian suggested that these so-called pyramids were actually made of sandstone and were natural, not man-made formations. The geographical term for this would be truncated ridge spur, a natural formation that is essentially nature's pyramid. Similar discoveries were made by Dermengian in Rio Tinto. There are still whispers of the formation being pyramids today, with the documentary The Secret of the Incas covering a 2011 expedition to the pyramids of Paraguay. However, the most common modern consensus is simply that this is a natural formation, not one built by Inca populations. Rare 1,500-year-old painting of Jesus Christ found in an abandoned church in the Israeli desert. Whether you attend church regularly as a practicing Christian or your views of the religion have been shaped from the media or primary school church visits, many people have an image as to what Jesus looks like ingrained in their minds. However, a painting from 1,500 years ago may call that image into question. The Western media in modern society and historically, Jesus Christ is often presented with long hair and a beard, among other traits. However, an early painting discovered in an ancient Israeli church presents a vastly different image. A team of archaeologists from the University of Haifa in Israel stumbled across this painting whilst conducting research in the Negev Desert, in the ruins of a Byzantine farming village. Emma Mayan Fenner, an art historian from the university, was present upon the discovery of the church painting. In an interview with Haaretz, an Israeli newspaper, she made the statement, "I was there at the right time, at the right place, with the right angle of light, and suddenly I saw eyes." She continues, explaining that the image depicts Jesus at his baptism. Despite the classic Western expectations for Jesus to be portrayed as bearded with long hair, at no point do the Gospels offer a description of Jesus Christ. Furthermore, no known description exists in work developed later on. Instead, this popular image of Jesus, or rather any image seen, is an artistic interpretation and vision. Mayan Fernard said, when speaking to Haaretz, that in the past Jesus has been shown with many different appearances: long hair, short hair, with a beard, without a beard, to name just a few variations. Apparently, by the 6th century, the image of Christ with long flowing locks and a beard had been shown as the most consistent representation, an image that has continued in Western cultures even into the 21st century. The image found in Israel is not overly clear, with sun exposure having impeded the clarity of the artwork. It holds rough outlines and small smears of color, though many details have not stood the test of time since its estimated creation in the 6th century. The team of archaeologists say the church's image of Jesus shows him to have short curly hair, a prolonged face, large eyes, and an elongated nose. According to the work published by the team in the journal Antiquity, it was fairly common for Christ to be represented as having short hair throughout Egypt and Syro-Palestine. However, this convention seemingly disappeared from the later Byzantine art. One reason for this is that during the early 8th century it was outlawed to create religious images. This was one aspect of what would later be named the iconoclastic controversy, in which lots of Christians in the Byzantine Empire considered the creation of religious art equal to the worship of icons. This was illegal and prohibited by Emperor Leo III in 726 AD, and remained as such until the mid-9th century. This adds to the value of this discovery, highlighting the rarity of an Israeli depiction of Christ in this time period. While we have no answers as to the true appearance of Christ, it certainly is fascinating to understand why certain depictions have arisen and become more popularized when they may just be deemed less accurate or on par with often unseen interpretations of Jesus. This interesting discovery is certainly an intriguing discussion point into modern understandings of religion. 5,000-year-old penguin mummies found in Antarctica. We are aware of the devastating impact climate change is having upon our planet, though uncovering penguins that have passed away is one rather unanticipated consequence. Steve Emsley, a professor and ornithologist with the University of North Carolina specializing in the daily penguin migration, heard that fresh penguin droppings, also known as guano, had been found on Cape Irhiza by the Ross Sea in Antarctica. This was a surprising revelation to the Aderly expert, as the last time any penguins had been seen on Irisar was more than 120 years prior. Emsley knew the area was not ideal, as the snow-concealed beaches and areas Aderly penguins would utilize. With the days spare on an Antarctic mission, Emsley's team went to probe further to see what they could find. Well, the team found much more than guano. The area was littered with bones and carcasses. Some had experienced a sort of mummification due to the dry air, though others still had fresh skin and feathers suggesting a more recent death. Following this first glance, Emsley and his team thought that they may have missed a modern colony. However, in a surprising turn of events, radiocarbon dating revealed the intact carcasses were not as recent as they appeared. It is just that these bodies had only recently been exposed to the elements, thanks to the snow that once covered them beginning to melt more rapidly. These penguins were placed between 800 and 5,000 years old despite looking incredibly well preserved. Emsley says the area used to be a nesting ground evidenced through the pebble mound nests found over the site. This also explains why such a high proportion of the remains belong to chicks. The samples taken for research included eggshells, skin, feathers, and bones, all of which help to place these penguins on a timeline. 800 to 5,000 years is a broad time period to cover, though there is a reason for this lack of specificity. The research team explained in the journal Geology that Cape Irhiza had been occupied at 3 separate distinct times over this large period. Penguins typically return to the same location to nest each year, if the conditions allow it, though the Adelie penguins cannot use Cape Irhiza in the 21st century due to steep ice cliffs, which is what made the seemingly fresh bodies utterly confusing to begin with. This discovery provides insight into penguin behaviors, whilst also serving as a reminder of the harsh impact climate change is having upon the planet. Sometimes discoveries take time to reveal themselves. In a few centuries' time, perhaps modern interpretations of art and satellite imagery will be considered ancient and noteworthy when found. But what do you make of these discoveries that have been revealed? A recent update from seismic trackers is that a large 4.1 magnitude earthquake has been detected in Montana, just 50 miles northeast of Billings, Yellowstone County, Montana. This is just the latest update in regards to earthquakes detected in and around the Yellowstone area, with locals saying that this one was felt in the surrounding areas. Volcanic Discovery, along with other websites, have reported that the 4.1 magnitude earthquake was detected by the United States Geological Survey. Volcanic Discovery reported that the earthquake occurred at a depth of 6.2 miles, and this happened in the early hours of the morning on Tuesday 6th for July 2021, with residents then coming forward and saying that they felt the earthquake in the surrounding areas. Local towns said that the shaking had been felt. But the United States Geological Survey said this earthquake wouldn't have caused any damage to nearby areas. Another earthquake that measured in at 3.1 was detected south of Yellowstone, measuring above the usual 0.5 to 1.2 earthquakes that are normally detected around the area. One of the things that's been reported on is the large increase of earthquakes detected around Yellowstone Lake, but oddly enough the United States Geological Survey isn't reporting on them, with the data showing us that this has been going on now for the last few weeks. Seismic trackers around the lake are picking up on the tremors, but there's been no official comment from the United States Geological Survey. Yellowstone Lake has been showing an increase with these quakes, with the most recent one being detected at 3 this morning. Those who've been following the quakes, the increase in volcanic flow and bulge at Yellowstone have all been asking the same question. Why is the United States Geological Survey hiding some of these earthquakes and not reporting on them? One user said the following: "We can clearly see that the seismic trackers inside Yellowstone are picking up on these tremors, yet in some cases the USGS is not talking about them. They're the ones who tell people not to worry about these quakes and that they will not affect surrounding areas. Yet they're not commenting on some of them. It's a bit confusing, and I can see why people are starting to question what's going on." Well, another person said this: Is the United States Geological Survey ever going to cover this and update people about what's going on? Maybe they don't want to raise the alert as they don't want people flooding out of the area. But I still think there should be better communication about what's going on. Even if it's to tell people that they have nothing to worry about, the silence is definitely strange. This person had this to say, "I lived 14 minutes from Yellowstone and I felt this earthquake. In fact, so much so that it actually woke me up." Interestingly, attention has now been shifted to Yellowstone Lake and all of its recent activity. And even the United States Geological Survey has admitted that the lake is anything but quiet. The USGS said the following on their website. Earthquake swarm sequences of elevated earthquake activity with no clear main shock are common at Yellowstone and many other places. Swarms occur in a variety of volcanic and tectonic settings and have several possible causes. Some swarms are driven by slow fault slips that causes earthquakes, and this is on a few sticky patches of the fault. Other swarms are generated when magma field cracks push their way through the crust. And perhaps most commonly, swarms can be generated when water enters and interacts with pre-existing faults in the crust. Sometimes combinations of these mechanisms might be active in a given swarm. Out of volcano, everyone wants to know, is the swarm driven by magma? This question is particularly pressing if the swarm is occurring at shallow depths within a couple of miles of the surface, because a shallow magma-driven swarm could potentially be a precursor to an eruption. End quote. This is one of the things that people worry about, that this increase in magma movement and earthquakes are a sign that an eruption could be on the horizon. These worries aren't baseless either. In fact, a map showing the ground around Yellowstone has deformed over the last 2 years, and this was officially released by the United States Geological Survey. One of the researchers said the following: the uplift and subsidence is usually interpreted as due to addition of deep magma, related gases and water depths of 5 to 15 kilometers, or 3 to 9 miles beneath the ground surface. This cycle of uplift and subsidence is common and seems tied to earthquake swarms. That is, swarms appear to release the pressure that caused the uplift, thus allowing the region to return to a period of subsidence. End quote. The U.S. National Park Service has insisted that these swarms are nothing to worry about, although as highlighted by some, they haven't made any comments on the recent earthquakes that are 3 magnitude and greater, with some saying that they might be running some tests in order to see if any surrounding areas had been affected. After all, just because past swarms didn't affect certain areas, it doesn't mean that the new swarms can't do damage. The United States Geological Survey said the following about this movement. Over long periods of time, water flying through small fractures decomposes rocks in a process called weathering. Once a rock has been weathered, triggers such as 3 to 4 cycles, flowing water temperature variations, vegetation growth, and other factors can cause cracks in rocks to grow rapidly and possibly break free and fall. After discovering this, park officials have been forced to close areas off. Superintendent David Vaylor said the following: human safety is our #1 priority. And with an abundance of caution, we are temporarily closing this area until we can properly assess the situation. As of right now, people are still watching the data and hoping that the increase in activity slows down. So what do you make of the increased activity at Yellowstone? And the fact that the earthquakes seem to be increasing in magnitude as the weeks go on? Recent activity at Yellowstone National Park has piqued the interest of many people. Some are questioning what's going on around and underneath the park, as data seems to show that various different magnitude earthquakes are hitting the region. Yet the United States Geological Survey doesn't seem to be reporting on them. It's only because people are using online data files that they're able to read up on what's going on, and it's fair to say that some are worried. Even anonymous users have got involved in questioning what's going on. It's important to know that anyone can claim that they're part of the group anonymous. No one user speaks for the rest, and they don't act like a hive, but many of them share the same goals, which is bringing truth to the masses. One anonymous user recently had this to say about the recent activity around Yellowstone. The recent activity at Yellowstone has caught my attention, not because of everything that's going on, but rather due to the silence of park officials and others who should be updating us. I shouldn't be hearing about Yellowstone updates from online users. These should be coming directly from park officials, but yet it looks like data and certain information isn't even being reported on. One of their main jobs should be to effectively communicate to people close to the region, especially those that are feeling all of the recent earthquakes. Our group understands that this activity isn't uncommon and that it happens every year, but the data is showing us that these earthquakes are increasing in magnitude and that many earthquakes are not being reported on. I'm not naming names, but it's strange how they continue to stay quiet on this. The data doesn't lie. We can see what's going on. The goal now is to better understand how long this has been going on and what it means for those living close to this area. Interestingly, people have been saying this same thing for a few weeks now, and that's that these detectors around the park are picking up on larger earthquakes. As of right now, earthquake trackers from the United States Geological Survey show that there hasn't been any earthquakes in the Yellowstone region for the past few days. But other data shows that this isn't true, and that sensors around West Thumb show us that a recent earthquake measuring 2.7 hit the region. This is worrying because previous employees of the United States Geological Survey came forward and said that when these earthquakes start to measure in at over 2 in magnitude, researchers should be looking into these and seeing if they're having any permanent effects on the area. It's proof like this that it's being used to show people that the data isn't being reported on by the USGS, and that if you go on their website, this earthquake doesn't appear on their earthquake tracker yet. We can see from the pulses that they're definitely hitting Yellowstone. Hank Hester, a Yellowstone geologist, made a worrying announcement that an eruption at the supervolcano is going to happen. This increase in activity worried many people and officials, with even the White House allegedly getting involved. But it's important to note that back then the earthquakes weren't measuring as high as they are today, with some theorizing that the ones that are measuring in at over 2 in magnitude aren't being reported on by the USGS. And this could be not to worry those that live close to Yellowstone. The website Interlab was able to gain access to information from a source, and they said that they worked at Yellowstone, and that they reported that the White House ordered the United States Geological Survey to suppress information about the earthquakes. Interestingly, this document is making the rounds once again, as some have said that the recent earthquakes hitting Yellowstone are being downplayed, with some users saying that it's not a coincidence that some of the data is missing. Others have said that one of the reasons why the United States Geological Survey might not be reporting on these earthquakes is because they don't pose a risk, and that the park and those living close by won't be harmed by them. But as some have said, this isn't their problem. What they're pointing out is that the data is not being reported on. Even though we have proof that earthquakes are still measuring over to a magnitude and are still hitting the region, the point these people are trying to make is that this data isn't made up. We have proof that they're still coming into the Yellowstone region. In fact, just yesterday 3 earthquakes in a row hit the park, but yet there was no official update from the United States Geological Survey. Some people have been vocal about this and have shared their opinions online. One user said the following: "This isn't really good enough, is it? It's one thing not to update people about what's going on, but when you refuse to share the data on your earthquake tracking website, that seems a bit strange to me, and you can't blame people for questioning this." This user had this to say: "Although I'm enjoying these updates, I'd be lying if I didn't say that they're making me feel a little bit nervous. It's weird to know this movement happening around the Yellowstone caldera, but yet we aren't being told about it." While this user said this, for me it's about the risk. People who live here don't have many options. You stay here and continue to live in this area, with the data being held from you, or you move away and know that at least you're living in a much safer region. I know which option I'd be taking, especially after hearing about all this data that seems to be going missing. So what do you make of this recent news coming out of Yellowstone? Why do you think that the United States Geological Survey isn't reporting on some of these earthquakes?